issues. We are going to get started right away because we have a lot going on. So if you have a question, you are welcome to put it in the Q&A or in the chat, and you can chat directly to the hosts and panelists. But we are just going to go ahead and get started because there's a lot going on today. I wanted to thank you all for coming to our allyship workshop this month. My name is Mercedes. I am the National DEI Committee Chair. We have some amazing people on the call with us today. I am going to share my screen, and then we're going to go ahead and jump into the presentation portion of this. So we're going to have about a 10-minute presentation, and then we're going to have the rest of the time for our amazing panelists here to kind of share about allyship. So thank you for everyone. I see y'all from all over. So Boston, Portland, Seattle, Columbus, Los Angeles. That's great. I love to see the representation. We are going to get started. Let me share my screen. All righty. Can everybody see that? Thumbs up.
Looks good.
Perfect. All right. Let me move this because I can't figure out what I'm doing here. Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you all for joining us again. As I mentioned, we are talking about allyship today. We are going to move right on through, and this is recorded, so you will be able to review the recording afterwards. I want to introduce very briefly our panelists. They will be introducing themselves a little bit later as well, but we have Stacy Fisher, who has been a part of the NAWIC committee for a number of years now, Amber Foreman, who has been a part of our NAWIC LGBTQ plus resource group since we started last year, and then Misty Wheeler, who I have the pleasure of knowing from my previous company. I've worked with Misty over the years, and she is a huge ally. So first off, I kind of just want to get into really what is allyship. We throw that word around a lot, but what does it really mean? So this is very high level of allyship. We're going to do this presentation, and then there's going to be another allyship workshop in June for Pride Month. That is going to focus on creating spaces for other people who are different than you. So if some of these concepts seem really high level, that's on purpose, and we hope that you join us for our June webinar. So what is allyship? The definition of allyship is a role of someone who supports and advocates for marginalized groups without being a member themselves. So oftentimes, inclusion efforts get people asking about really important general questions, such as why groups are excluded or marginalized. And then allyship helps kind of answer those questions by building habits and creating opportunities, lifting voices up, creating safe spaces. So that's kind of how allyship works with inclusion. It's active. Allyship is always something that you're doing. It's not just a passive thing. And a key thought is it's not about calling yourself an ally. It's about how you really show up for those in your community, in NAWIC, at your workplaces. I'm going to share a little image. I'm not going to go through this image, but this is kind of speaking to the point that allyship is very active and it's not a passive allyship. Allyship is really a journey, right? Not a journal, sorry. Allyship is a journey. Um, you know, there's different stages to this journey. Everybody is at different stages. First stage is kind of asking what is allyship. If you're here and you don't really know and you haven't participated as an ally before, then you're at the beginning of the journey, and that's okay. We're hoping that giving the information will help you on your allyship journey. Next, you're going to move into listening. And then once you kind of listen and educate yourself, then you're going to show up for those as an ally and speak up. How can you be a better ally? Ask yourself, like, what's the next step for you? What's the next step in the journey? So we want to help you with what the next step in the journey is, but we really want to showcase why is allyship important. So I'm going to put up a slide. There's a lot of data on this slide. I am not going to go through everything, but I think it's really important to kind of see the impact that is being had, especially for the LGBTQ plus community. Now, allyship is showing up for any marginalized community, but as our resource group, we are focusing on the LGBTQ plus community right now. There is a lot going on I'm sure you all have seen what is happening in the news. But these first three stats are really pretty mind-blowing. In 2023, over 600 anti-LGBTQ plus bills were announced. In 2024, roughly 180 were advancing through state legislators. And in April of 2025, we are 4 months into the year, there have been 867 anti-LGBTQ plus bills introduced. Only one state has not introduced any new bills, and that's Vermont. Go visit Vermont and give them all of your tourism dollars, as Stacy mentioned last week. That is huge. There's so much going on. We're living through a moment where a lot of basic rights for a lot of different groups are being debated and in some cases stripped away. And the landscape continues to present really serious challenges for marginalized communities. We see that with immigration. We see that with the LGBTQ plus community. We see that with women as well. So allyship in all areas really matters right now. Standing up and showing up and speaking up for those. Maybe you have privileges you don't know, but this allyship matters for all of us. So what are the benefits of allyship? These benefits of allyship focus a little bit on the person and individual as well as kind of workplace allyship. So obviously improved mental health, inclusion really fosters trust, productivity, and belonging. Your voice can help create safer spaces, more supportive spaces. You know, allies really play a pivotal role in fostering environments where marginalized communities can feel valued, feel like they have an opportunity to speak up, feel like they can show up authentically. People who have improved mental health are often happier and more productive. And if you feel safe in a workplace or you feel safe in a community, you're more likely to stay, right? There's increased retention. Um, Advocacy and support really kind of builds into this and it helps, use one voice to advocate for equity, inclusion, and equality. And supportive allies can just really significantly impact their marginalized communities and help offer that sense of belonging and acceptance. As I mentioned, passive support is not enough. Allyship really helps kind of counter some of these narratives and policies. And this really helps our colleagues, our friends, and our family members feel safe and valued. And really, bottom line, that's good for your community, that's good for your business, good for your workplace. So how can you be an ally? What does that mean, right? We've talked a little bit about what allyship is. We've talked about why it's important and we've talked about the benefits, but how do you show up? How do you speak up? There's a couple of different ways to do this. There's communication, right? Using inclusive language, respecting pronouns and chosen names, um, using gender neutral titles. I try really hard to say all or y'all or people or folks instead of saying guys. I grew up saying guys. I'm not perfect. I mess up a lot. But I think the intention is important. Something that we talked about in our prep meeting was there's a difference between me saying it accidentally and recognizing it and correcting myself, and then me saying it and just moving on and not being intentional about my thoughts around my communication. I spoke to a woman recently who told me, I get it, like I understand, but I'm still going to keep saying guys. So the intention and the allyship wasn't there, right? Avoiding, if you make a mistake, correct yourself. You don't need to over apologize to draw attention, but just, correct yourself in the moment, gently correct others if you feel like you can. Um, Respect privacy and challenge harmful language. So, it's not about asking them, okay, well, why are you using that pronoun or why is that your name or what chosen name? It's just kind of respecting privacy and communicating that you support them and their choices and you see them. And then you want to practice, active listening and you want to focus on challenging harmful language. So harmful language can be, I know I grew up with it, my brothers used to say it, but something that I grew up with was one of my brothers would say, well, that's really gay. I know that that term is not as prevalent as a saying, but it still happens. Challenge that. Say, what do you mean by that? Why did you use that word? In the olden days, gay had a different meaning and a different term, but it has been weaponized over the years. But challenge that kind of language and really communicate with your peers, your coworkers, your community members about what it means to be an ally and how you can show up. Visibility. There's a couple of different ways that you can show up as an ally. Signal support. I'm not wearing it today, but I had every intention of it. But this is my life, and I woke up late. But I have an ally pin that I wear on some of my jackets or on my bags. Sometimes even that simple little act of being visible, where you might come into a space and somebody might be uncomfortable and they see your allyship pin or sticker, or they see that you put pronouns on your name tag, or they see that you have your pronouns in your email signature, that can make them feel safe. That can make them feel like they have somebody they could go to or talk to. That's really modeling your behavior too. It's like being an ally out loud, right? And with all that, including, maybe it's your desk, maybe you have a little allyship poster or a flag. I had a flag at my previous company that I had at my desk. Again, kind of using inclusive greetings. It's all about creating those really safe and welcoming spaces for people. And there's so many ways that you can do that. And then finally, how can you take action? How can you speak up? How can you show up? Um, as I mentioned, these all kind of tie in together, right? But speak up, intervene when someone's being disrespected, harassed, or excluded. Elevate voices. Maybe there's somebody in the room who is part of the community or part of a marginalized community, and they're never called on for their ideas. Maybe their ideas are shot down or they're talked over. Elevate their voices, bring them to the table, make space for them to share. And then educate yourself. Do not rely on the marginalized community or the LGBTQ plus folks to teach you. It is on you and it is your responsibility to go learn on your own. There are many, many resources. We are going to share them at the end, but go educate yourself. Understand that mistakes are part of the process. You acknowledge them, you apologize, and you commit to just do better. So what's next? I know that in the climate right now, there's a lot happening within workplaces, within communities. But if your company has decided to continue, join the ERG, join a committee, join a pride committee, attend a pride event. Maybe your company has decided that they're not going to continue with their ERGs or some of their culture DEI initiatives. Maybe then in June, you go attend a pride event with a friend or a coworker that you know is a part of the community. Maybe you show up for them during Asian American Heritage Month this month. There's many ways that you can show up for the people around you, and then support marginalized community businesses, whether that be an LGBTQ plus nonprofit or business, whether that be a Black or woman-owned business. Show up and support them, small business, um, and then keep learning. Explore, educate yourself, and to help you do that, we're going to give you some resources. These QR codes go directly to these websites with a lot of material on allyship and inclusion and belonging. As I mentioned, this is recorded. I will share this out to everyone who's registered for the webinar today. And then on the bottom there, those are a couple of hotlines. So maybe you know somebody in your um, community or at your workplace that might be struggling. Maybe they don't know about these resources. Those are hotlines that they can call and get some support and help. Sorry. Okay. All right. I know that was a lot in a brief amount of time. But like I mentioned, I really want to make sure that we have enough time to give these wonderful panelists their opportunity. So we have a few questions kind of building off of the slide deck and kind of talking about allyship. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. As I mentioned, if you have a question, please put it in the chat or put it in the Q&A. I will be monitoring that, and then we'll have some time at the end. So first off, I really want to kind of talk about everybody's personal journey with allyship. So whoever wants to get started first, how would you describe your personal journey with allyship? If you don't speak up, I'm just going to pick one of you.
I'll always go first. Getting me to shut up is the hard part. So my journey with allyship was kind of a lot of ups and downs. I started I was an ally. I've known since I was very young that I was not straight, but I didn't put words to it for a very long time, and continued to just be an ally well into my late 20s. And then in my late 20s, decided I wanted to use the privilege that I have as someone who is in a heterosexual marriage. So I'm very straight passing to be a little louder. So I came out. I told everybody, hey, actually, I'm not straight. I'm queer. I'm not just an ally. I am a member of this community. And since then, I have been very loud and very proud, and continue to work on my allyship for everyone else in my community as well as myself.
Thank you for sharing. Misty, do you want to go next?
Thanks, Mercedes. Yeah, Misty Wheeler. My pronouns are she and her. I guess I'd start a little bit with my background. So I have a decade of experience as a contractor owning a company building beautiful timber frame homes, custom homes, and then kind of changed careers and went into the electrical trade as an electrical apprentice. And what I noticed right off was that, you know, that uh, the necessity of allyship, especially in situations where there's a differential in power. I changed careers, and I went from being the owner, where my skills and abilities were never questioned, to being an apprentice or even a journey or four-person level electrician. And every new group that I worked with, I had to work. I had to work to prove myself, right? And I had to work harder than the guys around me. And it was intentional about guys. That was the guys that I was working with around me. And I also had to be pleasant to work with, which was, a whole nother thing that they never had to worry about. Um, so I learned that I had to find the people who are willing to give me an opportunity to learn and grow, do something besides manage material or hold a clipboard, and then also to eventually lead. And as I built the relationships, I wanted to make sure that I was pulling those up around me, uh, and sharing the skills that I had learned and how to adapt to a construction culture, um, and then eventually use my skills to kind of create access for diverse candidates into our apprenticeship programs. And so I figured out pretty early on, as like a second period apprentice, how to hack our apprenticeship application process, and created my own process for getting people in, and then slowly, over the last decade, have helped to get hundreds of people, like probably I'm probably up to about 650 people that I've helped get into our apprenticeship program, mostly women, people of color, and LGBTQ. And I did that because I wanted to give access, first of all, but I also wanted to change the culture, so that I wanted to kind of create a construction culture that I wanted to work in, that where diverse folks could have an opportunity to learn and grow.
Amazing. I have been on on the contractor side and seen what Misty has done over the years, and it's just really impressive. And I thank you for being a part of this. Amber, last but not least, what is your personal journey with allyship?
Thanks, Mercedes. I came out about 2.5 years ago, started transitioning. Amber, pronouns she, her. I'm one of the very few openly transgender women in the construction industry. And if I didn't have allies, it would be a very lonely place to be. So for me, it's really critical. It's been a learning experience. I'm still learning. One of the things I learned was how important self-advocacy is. People just aren't going to figure stuff out on their own. And yeah, I have to assume that if they say something that's kind of off or isn't really okay, um, they're not doing it intentionally. And I have to educate them, why somebody transgender might consider that to be hurtful or harmful or incorrect. And again, it's been a learning experience. It took me a little while to get there. I used to hear stuff and just kind of grit my teeth and not say anything. It's like, oh, I need them as an ally. And it took a while until I realized, well, they're not going to learn how to be a good ally if me being who I am isn't the one doing the teaching. And so I've really kind of done a 180. And when somebody does say something, I'm very quick to try and kindly, it's like not, why did you say that? And just, this is how that would be received by a transgender person and, kind of how they process it and why it might not be okay. And I've actually had very good reactions to people in doing that.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to stay with you, Amber, and I'm going to ask our next question here to really kind of give our audience a good understanding. Um, can you share a time when somebody showed up for you and made you feel really seen and supported? And that could be, in your community, that could be at work, that could be through NAWIC. Would you be able to share something, Amber?
I could share a bunch, but there's two. There's actually two I want to share because they're kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. So recently, I became the global vice chair of our Pride ERG, very large corporation. So that to me is a pretty big deal um, to feel heard, feel seen, and have the opportunity to speak on behalf of my community. The other thing is I had a couple people that selected me as a mentor. And when I accepted them as mentees, they specifically said they were so hopeful that I would accept them. And not because, they were in the community, one is, the other isn't, just because they had developed some respect for me along the ways and really felt they could glean something from me from a mentoring relationship. So again, it's kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, but both were like, wow, that was really, really cool and made me feel special.
That's amazing. I love to hear it. Stacy, what about you? Have you had a time in your life where somebody's shown up for you?
Yes, like Amber said, so many times. But probably one of the biggest and longest running ones, as I mentioned before, I am married. I met my husband in high school, fell in love, married him well before I ever realized that I was bisexual. So when I did, maybe not before I realized, but before I was ready to come out is what I should say. But when I did realize that I wanted to live more authentically and be louder and prouder and tell everyone the truth, I had to have a hard conversation with him because it wasn't just going to affect me. It was going to affect him. People were going to and have said things to him about how I'm going to leave him for a woman. Um, he gets sort of the brunt of the snide comments and the things that people will say. So he and I really had to sit down and have that conversation of, are you comfortable with essentially now being in a queer marriage? And he didn't hesitate for a second. He said, yeah, that's who you are. I love who you are. And let's do this. I'm ready. And he has become such a great ally. I tell everyone, there's pride stuff all over my house. It looks like a rainbow threw up. I have bought none of it. Anytime he's something pride related, he's like, look, I got this. And I actually was putting together little flags a couple of weeks ago for an event that I was hosting here at work. And I was very tired and I put all of the flags on upside down, and he came in, and I said, look, I got flags. And he said, isn't the red supposed to go on top? And then he sat down and fixed all 50 of my little pride flags for me. Just little things like that he continuously supports who I am. And we are in about 2 weeks going to celebrate our 21st wedding anniversary, and he continues to show up.
Congrats.
Loud,
That's amazing.
loud.
I love that. That's amazing. I think that is not always the experience and the situation. So I'm really happy that you have such an ally who showed up and loved you no matter what and through it all. Um, Misty, you're not a part of the LGBTQ plus community, but as an ally and as a very strong ally over the years, um, you mentioned a little bit about on the work side of things, what got you intentional about allyship. Was there another turning point or aha moment for you that really pushed you into being such an active ally?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's not a lot of there were not a lot of women in the trade when I started, and some of those that were LGBTQ members of LGBTQ plus community, and they were good friends of mine. And then my son came out to me as trans when I was a fifth year apprentice. He was 14 years old, and it was uh it was kind of a wild a wild moment trying to understand how to support my child, and um in something that I really had no idea of how to do that. So my a lot of my friends, I had one particular trans friend who was fantastic and who kind of became my mentor as I was learning how to um, be an ally for my son. And that for me was definitely a turning point because, I I, I had to choose to he was also trying to at 14 he was trying to go through the hormonal transition, and I really didn't know much about it, and so I needed that guidance and it to help me support him and love him and make him know that he was accepted.
I think it's amazing that you found a mentor to help you on your allyship journey. You know, we don't necessarily know, or don't have the same experiences. We have a privilege that the community doesn't. So getting connected with somebody in the community can really help you and understand how to really show up for them. And that kind of leads into our next topic. How can you show up every day? What does everyday allyship really look like in action? How can you listen and learn from those around you? So I'll start with you, Misty, because we just finished up. But for you as an ally, what does everyday allyship look like? And what are small things that you do that make an impact? Whether that be in your son's life, at work, in the community.
I think for for my son, he knows that he can always reach out to me. Um, uh, I want him to grow and to struggle, but he can always reach out to me if he needs some support, and we just have that um, that explicit understanding and that we've communicated with each other. As far as like the people around me, I think that it was really interesting after and with my son's permission, like some of the times you would hear things on the job, guys would usually would bring make comments about, like you said, like, oh, that's gay or whatever, and I would just I feel like we should be professionals. We make a lot of money. We should be professionals out there. So I would just say, like, my son's trans. Like, what do you mean? Like, that's gay?
Mm,
And it
mm.
would stop people in their tracks. Now that I'm a business rep, here at my local union at BW Local 46, I'm the Women's Committee staff liaison. Our Women's Committee is open to everybody, but we specifically are supportive of our LGBTQI community, and and they're welcome there, and it's a safer space. We have, instead of having brotherhood nights, we have sibling solidarity nights, so everybody can feel included. Also, oh, I wore this today. So we made these t-shirts. I am safe if you are all of these things, and speak if you, and I'll listen and I'll hold you. And we made these shirts to let people know, especially out on the job site, who the safe folks are, right? Who's going to have their back.
Oh, I love that. I think that's a big part of modeling allyship too for others, right? And being there and really being upfront about your allyship. Um, again, it's that piece of allyship is active, it's not passive. You're not sitting in the corner, not saying anything. You're speaking up, you're saying things. Stacey and Amber, on everyday allyship, what are some things that people might think are helpful, but maybe they aren't as helpful, or maybe you wish they'd look at it differently or approach it differently? What are, I don't want to say mistakes because I don't think anybody trying to be an ally is necessarily making a mistake. But what do you want to kind of convey about maybe some of the allyship that people try to do, and how could they approach that or think about it differently?
I'll jump in. I'll beat Stacy to the punch. Um, there's a couple of things. It's kind of, if you wouldn't ask a straight or cisgender person the question, it's probably not appropriate to ask somebody in the community. And especially early on, people didn't really understand that kind of, questions like, what's your sexuality? I'm transgender. There's a totally difference between, my gender identity and my sexuality. And would you ask a straight person what their sexuality is or a cisgender person? Probably not. What work have you had done? That's, would you ask a straight or cisgender person those kind of questions? And the other thing is sometimes people think they're saying something that would come across as supportive, and it's actually quite the opposite. The best example I can give you is a lot of people have made the comment, welcome to being a woman, which I think they're
Mm.
being welcoming. The reality is, as a transgender woman, it kind of is received as, you chose this, suck it up. Not the intent, but it is kind of, and that was one of the things I would just kind of bite my tongue and not say anything. And I actually did a LinkedIn post about it. Like, kind of, is it just me? I get this a lot. It kind of bothers me. And invariably, the responses from other transgender women are like, that is like the worst. It's like, I have the same exact feelings you have. I receive it the same way. So it's kind of like, it isn't me. And I have started, when people say that, kind of like, think about the impact of what you're saying. I know you're well intentioned, but I've always been a woman. I just chose to be authentic a couple of years ago, but I've been a woman my whole life. I've always known, and everybody else has always known. I got made fun of when I was growing up. All the other kids knew what I was, so I didn't become me. So
Mm.
if you want to welcome me to something, welcome me to my authenticity or something like that.
I think that's a great point. I think the questions may not be ill-intentioned, but I think it's great to kind of look on that question before you speak and go, huh, would I ask somebody else this? Daisy, do you have anything to add?
Um, Everything Amber said is fantastic and so great. As a cis woman, I don't get a lot of those questions, but as someone who has, since she was very young, often looked quite boyish, I have been on the receiving end of some things that are not so great. I think the only thing that I might add is sometimes it's okay to shut up. Some allies, they get passionate, and I love that. And my husband is one. I'll talk about him a lot. But sometimes being a really loud ally when the people around you need you to maybe be a quieter ally or let them use their voice for a little bit. I have a lot of amazing friends who would fight anybody if they had to. And sometimes I need to be the one whose voice is heard. Sometimes someone from the community is the one who needs to be the loudest. So speak up for sure, always, but also listen to the people around you, the queer community around you, to what they need you to do. Ask them, do you need me to stand quietly behind you, or do you need me to come out guns blazing? So always speak up, but also always listen.
No, I think that's a piece of the active listening bit as well, right? Um, and kind of how you communicate and show up. So I appreciate that. Kind of bringing it into more of the um, workplace side of things, we talk a lot about making the workplace an inclusive and safe space. That's the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. That's a lot of the work that we do as part of ERGs. And obviously, some of that is a little bit on an attack right now. But a lot of us still want to continue doing the work. We still want to show up. Maybe there's not as many initiatives or workplace supported activities that are happening. But we want to, obviously, those on the call here care about allyship. So, from your perspectives, what actually makes a workplace really inclusive and safe? Not just checking a box, but what really makes you show up at work and go, I can be authentic here? Um, and is there something that we can do as allies to make sure that that is happening? Anyone can jump in.
I can go. I think from a company standpoint or a leadership standpoint, if you have the ability to double down on DEI efforts, sort of regardless of what is happening around us, that's huge. But on just a personal allyship area, things like Misty's shirt, having a flag at your desk, little stuff. It can be seen sometimes as performative, but if you back it up by also supporting people when they need it, by speaking up when it's appropriate, those, you've got to back up what you're doing. But some of those little things to just sort of say, hey, I see you, I understand, if you need something, I'm right here, can be kind of a big deal. I sit in a cube farm and my whole row has pride flags on their desks. And it's every time I walk into work and just see like a whole row of pride flags, I feel warm, because I
Mm.
know that not only are they there for me, but if someone else were to walk on our floor and see all of that, not to mention my crazy cube, they would know, like, if something was up, here is a group of people I can go to and say, hey, I'm struggling, I could use some help. So little things like that can make a difference.
Yeah, so it doesn't need to be this huge, workplace altering initiative that has to come from leadership either. It can be you just showing up every day. I think many people think that they can't do anything that makes a difference unless it's big. But sometimes the small things are what makes the spaces feel the most inclusive and safe. Amber, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say that it is often the small things, all those little things add up. People stopping by my desk and, having a kind word, good morning, looking me in the eye when, we're in close proximity and they talk to me. Um, you know, Leadership and their involvement is important too. Actions speak louder than words. So, if a leader comes up to me and they engage with me and they talk to me, people are going to respect that, and they're going to know that that leader, it isn't performative. They generally care about me and care about how I'm doing. And the other side is, it's just as important what's said and done when I'm not in the room as when I am in the
Mm,
room. So it really is, if somebody says something they shouldn't say or says something kind of off, um, it's somebody speaking up, like Misty said, and saying, well, it really wasn't too cool. And this is why. Would you say that if this person was here? Why would you say it behind their back or, whatever? But again, it's all those little things add up to making you not only just okay showing up authentically, but enjoy showing up authentically.
mhm, mhm. I like the point about doing it when the people aren't around. I think that really goes to show that the actions that they're doing are not performative, that they really truly believe in being real allies. Misty, you and I have different voices and privilege, but um, how do you use your privilege or your voice in spaces where the LGBTQ plus folks might not have a seat at that table or might not be able to enact some change in their organizations? As a part of IBEW, you've had a lot of work to do in the last couple of years, and you've been doing some really cool things.
I think, for me, as somebody who has become a leader in my local, especially, and both out in the field and in our union, like it's modeling the accountability and the vulnerability first. And it's not just, I have to say, it's not just in policies, it's also in, creating mentorship pipelines and refining your conflict resolution strategies, and creating pathways into leadership, especially because what you ultimately want to do is create pathways for folks to get into leadership, so we do see some leaders that are diverse and that represent us, right? And that's those are some of the things that I've been working on, not just with the as the Women's Committee staff liaison here, but I'm the coordinator of our leadership training program and am building a mentorship program. And so all of that together we're working to make sure that everybody has access to not just a great career, but they can advance into places they want to. So we have that representation.
Mhm. Yeah, I think mentorship is huge, and it sounds like many of us end up being mentors in different ways, but I think that is a huge way in making those spaces. Um, Stacey and Amber, what is one change, big or small, that you'd like to see more allies advocate for in our industry or in just company culture in general?
I think you hit on it on one of your slides, inclusive language. If you just look at the construction industry, and it's not just the construction industry, but it's a traditionally male-dominated industry, and it's almost like everything centers around man or men, foreman, general foreman, manpower, man hours. So it wouldn't be terrible if it was four-person or general four-person, and coming up with something different. You touched on guys. There could be 75 women in a room and 25 men, and the person conducting the meal say, "Are you guys ready for a break? Are you
Yeah.
folks ready for a break? Are you people ready for a break?" So, it really is kind of a flattening the language down, and it doesn't just impact, transgender community or the LGBTQ community. It spills over into intentionality for all communities. Women get lumped into that, guys, just like
Mhm.
transgender women do, and
Mhm.
so again, it's kind of just making it all inclusive language.
Mhm. I think to your point, it is part of the slides. We talked about inclusive language and using the chosen name and the pronouns. I know that is in contention right now, in the climate as it is, but that is a huge way that you can show up as an ally. Not to throw my husband under the bus. My husband is amazing. But we literally had this conversation last week where we were talking, and I was talking about four people, and he's like, "Why don't you just call it a foreman? It's just call it a foreman. Nobody cares." And I was like, "No, no, no. People do." And my husband is a huge ally. He's a huge supporter, and he loves the work that I do. But sometimes it's just also that education piece. In it does matter. It might not matter to you, but it might matter to the next person or five people down the line. And so it's thinking kind of bigger picture in that way as well. So I think, even the most well-intentioned people sometimes just need that little bit of reminder or education. Stacey, do you have anything else that you would love to see allies advocate for?
Um, no, I think you guys really touched on it. I just a kind of a little funny thing is when people do like foremen or mailmen or whatever, if it's someone I know, I will often say, "Oh, you mean a male forewoman?" It's a tiny little thing that I can do that's kind of jokey and fun, but it sort of flips it back around. Like, "Oh, you mean a male policewoman?" I've heard that they're allowed to do that now. Just a little thing, right? I kind of turn it around, but that's a huge inclusive language. We have been centering men in our world forever, but especially in our industry. And I think
Mhm,
decentering them is the goal here is yeah, for women, for people. We don't need
mhm,
to say guys. I have the luxury of living in the South, so y'all is just part of my vernacular now. Highly recommend it. All y'all, it means all. So definitely work on, consciously work on, if you know that you say things that are maybe on that line, pick one, work on
Mm.
that, catch yourself. Don't feel overwhelmed. When you get that one, the
Mhm.
rest start to come a little easier.
Mhm. And to the point we've made is it's about the intention, right? You're gonna mess up, you're gonna make mistakes. I mentioned earlier, I do. Everybody likes to think that I'm perfect on my journey, because I am very visible and I do a lot of this work and I've done this work, I'm certified, but trust me, I mess up all the time. And it's being intentional about the way that you react to that and how you move forward from that. So I think that's all really great. And I think again, this is not just related to the LGBTQ plus community. This is women. We are NAWIC. We are the National Association of Women in Construction, right? And we're not hating on men. I think people think that we do that too. It's not. It's just how can we make this space more inclusive for all marginalized communities, right? Um, in closing, before we open it up for a few minutes for some questions, um, is there any advice that any of you would give to somebody who wants to be an ally, wants to start their journey, or wants to be a better ally, but doesn't really know where to start?
I would say educate yourself, and someone you know is in the LGBTQIA plus community. Find someone, ask questions. Don't make someone do the work for you. But as you're going through your education, if you're not sure about something or you run into something that's confusing, you all now have at least one queer friend. Hello, feel free to reach out to me anytime. Um, if you're doing the work, if you're putting in the work, you're educating yourself, but you're not sure about something, you're confused about something, you heard something or read something or whatever, I will always help. I'm always here to answer questions for people who are putting in the work. So, and there are plenty of other people like me who, if you're making that effort, they will step up and help you.
Amber, Misty, do you have anything to add?
I'll jump in and say it is a learning experience. So you can't go into it thinking I'm going to be super ally overnight. Um, it takes time. It's like Stacy had just said, don't overwhelm yourself. Start small. This is what I'm going to master this part of being an ally and build on it over the course of time. Before you know it, without even realizing it, you will become a super ally.
And I'll just follow up and with something my mom always told me, which is be the change you want to see in the world. I mean, you can start by listening. You know, also let go of the need to do it perfectly because you're probably not going to. And one of the first skills you might build is saying, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then moving on, correcting yourself and moving on. Also, like just learning to amplify uh, the voices of the community, and showing up when it's not convenient, right? And being somebody that they can trust.
And I think, we mentioned earlier that allyship is a journey. They've mentioned, small steps, small things can still make a difference. If you are attending this and you're overwhelmed with how do I get started? How do I make a difference? Maybe I'm not comfortable speaking up, or maybe I'm in a place where I don't feel like I can. Um, or maybe, maybe you have family that is around you that isn't supportive of people that are other. Um, I just want to kind of finish with a brief little story. I obviously do a lot of this work nowadays, but that's not where I started. My family is my father in particular, is very close-minded. And I grew up being very close-minded and had very, very specific feelings about different things that are happening in the world now. And this would not have been something that I would have done when I was in high school or junior high. Um, and so, something to give you an insight of my family, my brother came out as an atheist a couple of years ago to my parents, but the way that he did that is by telling them that he was gay first, because that was worse for them than him being an atheist. And my parents are very, very religious. So it can be hard to do this work when you're in a space where maybe your family isn't supportive of the people, your community, maybe your workplace isn't safe. So it's just those small little actions. Um, I've I have been on a very intentional journey the last 10 years to show up for people who are in marginalized community as a marginalized community myself. But I'm still learning. I don't always know how to show up the best way. So for me, it's simple things like the using their pronouns and using their chosen names. That can be the simple, it's correcting people on a job site. We had somebody at my work transition and they'd known that person since they were a kid. And they were like, well, I'm always going to call him a girl. And I was like, but that's not who he is. And so it's the little tiny things that you can do that really make a difference. And you are all on a journey, and it's okay to be at different stages on the journey. So just I would encourage you to keep going and to reach out to us or those around you in your communities that may have, support or help for you. You're not alone in the allyship journey either. But if you have any questions, we have about 6 minutes left. So I want to make sure that if there's anybody who has a question, please, you can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat or in the Q&A. I'm also going to put in the chat a comment that is, if you want to reach out to us, if you need contact information, please email dei@nawic.org. I will also, like I said, give you the presentation and the recording. But if you want to reach out to us and get their contact information, I'm offering it up without asking, but here we are. I'm sure they'd love to give you their contact information. And so, I just hope to see y'all at a future. As we're kind of seeing if there's any questions, I mentioned briefly earlier that we are having another workshop. So we are having Create Spaces for Others Different Than You workshop June 24th. We will have a flyer out soon. That is actually with Julie Kratz from Next Pivot Point. She is a keynote speaker. So it is going to be really impactful. So if you want to join that, please feel free to email dei@nawic.org and I'll get you on our little email list. It'll also be posted on National's website under events. We also have an event coming up in May. I know that there's a lot going on in the world. And those of you who have participated with us in the past have probably heard of Brave Talks. Brave stands for Be Real, Authentic, Vulnerable, and Empowered. For May, in celebration and recognition of Mental Health Month, we are putting on a webinar on the 12th with Mandy Kine, who is the Director of Safety at AGC of Washington. She is a national speaker as well. She's amazing. She's going to do a brief kind of similarly kind of 10 to 15 minute message about kind of self-care tips and how to show up for yourself. You need to take care of yourself first before you can take care of others sometimes. And then the rest of the time is just going to be a brave talk for anyone who wants to come. Maybe there's something you're going through or you're struggling with, but we would love to have you come. Maybe something really amazing just happened to you, you want to share. Maybe you need advice. Those are what Brave Talks are for. They're safe spaces. It's not recorded. And it's just a safe space and an opportunity for you to connect and create community. I haven't seen anything come in, so I'm just going to keep talking. But if you are attending annual in Boston this year, we will have a Brave Talk session as well. We had so many people interested last year, we didn't fit the room that we were in. So we have a bigger room this year, which we're excited about. That will be on the agenda and in the program. So if you want to join us for that, it again will be a safe space and just about creating community and connections. I have learned a lot from those Brave Talks and gotten advice over the years as well, and been able to share, job transitions and promotions and things that I'm excited about and that are happening in my life. So if you want to be a part of any of those are all going to be on the website. The flyer should go out today or tomorrow for the mental health on the 12th, and then it'll also be on NAWIC's website. So share with your friends. They're free and open to anyone. You do not have to be a member of NAWIC. So we hope to see you at those different events. And then for those of you going to annual, I hope to see you all at annual. But thank you all for coming. We'll hang out for a couple more minutes if there's anybody here who wants to ask a question. But other than that, thank you all for taking your Tuesday morning or afternoon, depending on what part of the country that you're in. And we love to see you showing up. Yes, see you in Boston. So excited. If you need Boston Rex, reach out to Rashana. She gave me a whole bunch and I'm very excited.
I'm pretty sure I'll be in Salem the weekend before, just soaking up all the energy of my witchy ancestors.
Love that. Amazing. Perfect. I think it's just us now.
Says we have
Okay.
10 participants still.
Oh, we have 3. Okay. Thanks for coming, Jody. Thanks for coming, Lisa. Ladies, I appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm gonna remove this person. Yeah, thank you. I know we had a little bit of a technical issues there in the beginning, but I think we got through it. I'm glad we got the chat thing working out.
Yeah.
I will email National though, because if they didn't put everybody in a waiting room, then it started recording immediately when we got in. So there's probably 3 minutes ahead of the actual presentation that we'll need to cut. So we'll just need to edit that. And then I'll make sure once we get the recording that you all get the recording and the presentation so you can share it with your networks if you want. I know that like Chara, who is from the East Coast as well, she's going to send it to her company's ERG. So I know that there are some people who weren't able to make it today. We actually had like 40 plus people register, so I'm a little surprised that we only had about 20 in the room. Normally we get a little bit more that, on the registering side, but we'll send it out to all the registrants as well anyway. And then I'll send it to all my DEI people and then we'll get it to all the network. But thank you so much. I think this was really, really great. Y'all did great. Sorry I cut questions. I was like, we're not gonna have enough time.
No, we talked about that, so
Yeah.
that was cool.
So on the fly, some choices were made. But I think we got some really important information across, and I just love to hear your voices. So thank you so much for participating and pulling this together kind of last minute with me. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you around.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks
Thank
for
you
Thanks a lot,
organizing this.
Mercedes.
Yeah, thank you, Mercedes, for putting this together.
Yeah, of
It's a lot
course.
of-
Anything I can do, everything I can do.
That
Well, thank
part's
you
true.
all. I say yes too often. But I appreciate you all, and like I said, I'll get this to you as soon as I can. But thank you and have a great Tuesday.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks, you too. Bye,
Thanks
everybody.
again. Bye, everybody.